It became clear earlier today that when Kentucky decided to move off of Mark Stoops and be willing to pay the lucrative $37.7 million buyout, which again is going to be spread out over the next few years instead of the next 60 days, they had their candidate already in mind. They knew that they were going to land a name that would win on over the crowd, win on over the boosters, and put Kentucky in a better spot for the long-term future. That has come. Will Stein is going to leave Oregon at the end of the year, and he's returning to the Bluegrass State. He is now Kentucky's next head coach. Multiple reports have confirmed it. We are just awaiting the news from Kentucky itself, but it does feel like that this is a new era of Wildcat football and one for the better. So let's break it all down. Welcome on into SEC Unfiltered's reaction show. It's Cole Thompson here. Like the video, hit the ring notification, subscribe to the channel because we're talking Kentucky football. We're going to be talking Kentucky recruiting. We're going to be talking Kentucky transfer portal. Countless things that go on with your Wildcats in college football daily. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get podcast listening systems. Follow us on the socials, link in the description, and check out all of our great work found at secunfiltered.com. And as always, we are proudly fueled by our friends over at FANDUEL. FANDUEL.com is the #1 place for you to place your early way to next year bets on Kentucky's win total. Go look at FANDUEL.com/SECU right now. Lay down $5. Go ahead and take the over or the under. When you go ahead and hit that bet, you will get $300 in bonus bets simply by playing a $5 bet at FANDUEL.com/SECU. This is a hire that is going to win on over the state of Kentucky and the people who are writing the checks. I do not know if this is going to be a hire that works for the long term. There's a lot of things that Kentucky has got to change when it comes to their approach. But from the standpoint of who Will Stein is and what Will Stein means to the Bluegrass State, this is one where you can feel pretty confident that Mitch Barnhart, knowing he was going to move off of Mark Stoops, had to bring in somebody who was going to add juice, who was going to add validity, that was going to also add a new spark to this offense. And that's what you're going to get. Let's start off with the pros and cons. Pro, this is a guy that understands Kentucky football. His dad played Kentucky back in the back in Jerry Kilborn on the defensive side. He was a former Louisville quarterback. He even has said on multiple records he grew up a Kentucky fan. He went and played at Louisville, but he grew up wanting to be at Commonwealth Stadium. He grew up being around the program. He said in 2011 in an interview with the Herald Ledger, there's definitely something special to me going to Commonwealth Stadium. I spent a lot of games there. I still know I was in section 128, row 13. He also said on On3's Andy Staples show in 2024, grew up a diehard Cats fan. My dad played there, so I went to every game at Commonwealth Stadium. I grew up on SEC football. This is a guy that gets Kentucky. He knows what it is to go through the trialing times, through the dark ages, and what it takes to be able to win. You need to find somebody like that to go ahead and win on over the crowd, win on over the boosters, and guarantee that you are going to see a new innovative spark to where people are going to be excited about getting off of the Mark Stoops era and entering a new regime with a guy who is going to bring something different to the team. That's where it is. So I look right now at certain things that we can talk about when it comes to the identity of what is going to be for Kentucky. Number one, offensively, going to be night and day difference. Kentucky this past year was 101st in scoring, 105th in total yards, 95th in passing yards, 86th in rushing yards. They allowed 29 sacks, 104th in the country, and they were 111th in red zone offense. You look at Oregon this past year. Oregon had number 9 in the country in points per game, number 13 in the country in yards per game. And on top of that, they also were top 25 in rushing. Top 10 in rushing, top 20 in passing, top 10 in red zone efficiency, and they allowed the fewest sacks in the Big Ten. A lot of things that they were going to get that needed to go ahead and put themselves into a great position to be able to be responding in this past year. The other thing is that you got to look at, they know Will Stein knows how to develop quarterbacks. Oh, and one more thing when we go to the offense. This is not the first time that we are seeing a person like Will Stein run an offense. When he was at UTSA, his offense was 9th in yards per game, 12th in points per game. It was top 20 in rushing. It was top 20 in red zone efficiency. A lot of things that were really, really poignant when it came to being able to build an identity and a repertoire. So this is somebody who has shown you through growth, through maturity, that he knows how to go ahead and call offenses, and he's learned from his mistakes. The other thing is he works with quarterbacks. He worked with Bo Nix, got him to from where Kenny Dillingham had him in year 1 to being a Heisman finalist in year 2. Worked with Dylan Gabriel, got him to an undefeated season and the college football playoff. Working with Dante Moore, got him to an 11-1 campaign. Some people believe he is going to be a first-round draft pick. So the guy understands quarterback. Why is that important? Because I believe Cutter Boley is actually cut to be the right QB for the program long-term in Lexington. I think that there is a lot to like about what Cutter Boley has, and there were some moments this year that you could see the identity. Quarterback play had gone downhill immediately in Lexington over the last few years, ever since Will Levis left. You weren't able to get anything really going with Devin Leary. You swung and missed on Brock Vandergriff. Zach Calzada, I could have told you from a mile away, was never going to be the right dude. And so you have Boley, and the last thing that you want to do is watch him go leave in the transfer portal to another school and find immediate success. There are intangibles that he has that I think are going to be really prominent. This past season, 2,100 passing yards, 66 completion percentage, 17 total touchdowns in 10 games. Going to be really important to land a guy that knows quarterback play. So automatically, Audie feels like a win. Now, here are the cons. He is going into a situation where Kentucky is at the bottom of the barrel once again in the SEC. That's just the bottom line. I can go ahead and tell you that this hire could be really good, that he is going to be able to revolutionize when it comes to the offensive personnel, be able to get this thing more up-tempo. You got to have the money and you got to have the resources. The good news is when it comes to the contract with Mark Stoops is that Mark Stoops is not going to take all $37.7 million over a span of 60 days. They worked out in the buyout to where he will take it over the next few years. So still, you're going to get some money up front. You're also going to be losing some money in the process because if you had to pay a lucrative buyout to get rid of your coach who wasn't able to bring back winning seasons and a winning formula in Lexington to begin with. So automatically, you have that working against you. The other thing is that you got to get buy-in from NIL. Right now, when you look at Kentucky football, there is not a lot of buy-in for what you've seen over the last few years because of a 4-8 season, a 5-7 season, and then 6-7 season, and a 7-6 season. That is what you've seen over the last 4 seasons underneath Mark Stoops since you had your last 10-win year. Which again, 10 wins, really prominent for Kentucky. I'm not saying that you can't get back there with Will Stein. I'm just saying it could take a little while to get there to begin with. So you got to go ahead and find a way to get boosters to get right back in the way they were with Mark Stoops after his first 10-win season in 2004-15. Was it with Terry Wilson? 16, 17? Blanking off the top of my head. First time with Terry Wilson when they had a 10-win season. Regardless, let's go back to the main point of the conversation. You got to be able to convince them that we're right there with football, basketball, we're right there with baseball, we're right there with softball. All those teams that have been making moves, going to the national going to the NCAA tournament every single year, going to the Women's College World Series, going to the Men's College World Series. A lot of things to where you got to convince people football needs to be a priority in the state. And if it can't be a priority in the state, you got a guy that is a very good offensive coach, succeeding on the West Coast, succeeding in multiple different campaigns, in multiple different levels. Because remember, this is somebody that came from Conference USA to the Pac-12 to the Big Ten, and every single stop, his offense has been productive. Offense has been the faltering point for Kentucky over the last few years. So automatically, good starting point there, but you need to be able to have the right resources. This is where it comes down to boosters. You're going to rely heavily on the transfer portal. Let's just call it as is. It is going to be a transfer portal-ridden first-year class, and it kind of has to be because if I think that right now when you're looking at all of the other people that are going out and sailing Kentucky's players, you're not going to be able to land every single name immediately. The third thing that is really important, you're going to have to be patient when it comes to Kentucky football because, number one, your schedule is brutally tough next year. You have a game against Alabama. You have a game against Florida. Revamp Florida team, Lane Kiffin's roster, Vanderbilt. If they land Jared Curtis, they're not going to miss much of a beat. You got to play on the road at Missouri. You got to play on the road at Oklahoma, South Carolina. We don't know what that game's going to be. At Tennessee, at Texas A&M. You're looking at potentially a 2-10 campaign. Now remember, you had a 2-10 campaign when you first brought in Mark Stoops. He was able to turn the program around, revitalize some juice, bring this team up, but you got to have to show growth. The things that you can go ahead and say right now when it comes to Will Stein hire is you got a guy that understands what it means to play at Kentucky because his dad played there, and you got a guy who understands what it means to win in the state. You're going to have to rely heavily on recruiting in the Midwest, probably looking at places like Ohio, looking at places like Indiana, Illinois, maybe a little bit of what you want to go to for West Virginia, go to the Virginias, go to South Carolinas, see a little bit from Arkansas. There's things that you're going to just have to do that are different than everywhere else in the SEC. And you are going to be portal dependent. That's probably the case. The good news is that we know that there is a great development of talent on the offensive side. And if you're able to go ahead and make a really smart hire when it comes to the defensive side, there's a reason to believe that this could end up really working on out, being something that ends up turning the corner and a really good bright spot. I don't know what we're going to make of this move. I just don't. I can go ahead and sell you on the possibility of this being a really prominent move. I can sell you on the possibility that from the offensive standpoint, this is all going to click. But at the end of the day, you got to do what is right for this program, which is put your money where your mouth is. That's what you're seeing at Auburn. That's what you're seeing at Florida. That's what you're seeing at Ole Miss. That's what you're seeing at Vanderbilt. That's what you're seeing at Tennessee. That's why those programs are being successful. The reason why Arkansas is not successful is because if they look at a program in football and say, we're not going to donate, best of luck, go get to 8 wins. You want to be like that. Because if that's how you want to be, then this is going to be a hire that ends up being, hey, Will Stein is really good. He got us to 7-6. He got us to 8-4. Oh, look, now Florida State's calling him and they're offering him $10 million. We're not going to match that. Best of luck. Go hit reset. That's what's going to happen if you don't put the money where your mouth is. And you have to do that in the SEC. And that's just bare minimum. Like, those are things that are happening all the time when you're looking at the most successful programs. And that is just the bare start of the conversation. Everything else afterwards, that's just kind of where we are. All right, let's get to your questions and comments before we get on out of here. Do you know anything about the Penn State coaching search? What do you think of Satake? I know this is off topic. I think Satake's going to get the job. I think that Penn State panicked and they thought they were a surefire to land the next big-time coach because of the name and the brand and the ambiance and the logo and what it meant to be a part of that university. And they watched as all of their top targets got signed away to new extensions or picked other schools, and they want to get a big name, and they realized that Satake is one who's proven he can win. He's proven that he can develop talent. He's proven that he can easily be able to retain talent in the state of Utah. Can he do it in state college? It's going to be really interesting. I don't know. I think that it was a very smart move to go ahead and get him on board. I would have gone with Matt Campbell personally. Maybe they made a phone call out to Ames, Iowa, when they said, hey, you know what? Thanks, but no thanks. I'm happy here. If that's where it is, not the worst hire that's out there. He good. I think that Will Stein is an efficient play caller. I think that he is a mastermind when it comes to working with quarterbacks. The track record backs it on up. He has developed 2 NFL starting quarterbacks. Well, really 1.5 because of right now, Shedeur Sanders is starting over Dylan Gabriel. And Dante Moore is getting rumored to be a first-round pick if he does go pro this year. So the quarterback development is there. Every single one of them was in the running for the Heisman Trophy at one point. Dante Moore's probably not going to go to New York anymore. But all 3 of the teams went to the college. 2 of the teams went to the college football playoff. If there was a 12-team playoff in 2022, in 2023, you would have seen Oregon there. They would have been hosting a playoff game in round 1, and largely it was because of what their offense was able to accomplish. I do think that he is cut from the same cloth as a guy like Dan Lanning, which means everything is about priorities, non-negotiables. We are going to go ahead and build this thing from the ground on up, and we're going to do it hard, and we don't give a damn what anybody else says about us. If you do not want to be here and this is not a priority for you, go ahead and don't let the door hit you on the way out. I think that is his mentality. And I think that's what you kind of need to go to a place like Kentucky. Is it going to work? That's the big question that everyone wants to know. It's going to be an upgrade offensively from what you had last season. Just automatically say that because it can't get much worse than what you were last year. You still need to be able to bring in the right players, the right Jimmies and the Joes, and have the right offensive game plan to be able to put together meaningful drives, meaningful moments, and eventually wins. And the schedule is not going to do Kentucky any favors for next year, especially when you're talking about on the road. Kentucky is never going to have a good football program. Again, your all-time winningest coach is Mark Stoops, and you just fired him for going 82-80. And if you really want to go ahead and vacate the 10 wins, he went 72-80. That's the all-time winningest coach. It has not been a good program. The thing is that when you brought in Mark Stoops, you brought in some continuity, you brought in some consistency, and you landed a dude who was able to at least get you to bowl eligibility. That's kind of what the standard is right now at Kentucky. Can you go make sure that you are competitive in games against other teams on your pecking order and pull off a few upsets every single year? Can you do that? Every 3 or 4 years, can maybe find your way to be ranked inside the top 25. 8-4, 9-3. If that's it, pretty good spot. But Kentucky has never been known for being a football school. It has always been known for being a basketball school. And now what Mitch Barnhart has done as the athletic director, and he's done some really good things while there, He's now had baseball go to the College World Series. He's had softball go to the Women's College World Series. Mark Pope was a really smart hire a few years ago. Feels like the perfect replacement to go ahead and land for John Calipari. But now football's moved down the pecking order. You have swimmers and divers and gymnastics that are also ahead of them. That's kind of where we are. So I'm not sure that we're going to see much growth in that standpoint. Bears, someone will replace him. Hang on. Huge hire for Kentucky. It is a huge hire. I like the hire. I do. I think it's a very smart hire because of, again, this is a guy that's from the state. He grew up a Kentucky fan. His dad played underneath. His dad played there when his dad played there earlier underneath. Who was it? Jerry Claiborne, if I'm not mistaken. Why am I blanking out? Yeah, Jerry Claiborne. In the 1980s, he wanted to go there. So again, it's somebody that wanted the job. Number one priority. I think that this was a kind of verbal agreement that was made over the last 48 hours because of, again, you're not moving up a Mark Stoops in that major contract if you don't feel comfortable with the guy that you're hiring. You're not just firing a guy and paying that lucrative buyout, which, again, credit where credit's due to Mark Stoops. He was willing to go ahead and take the buyout over the next few years, which massive instead of in the next 60 days. You're not making that move if you don't feel like that you're upgrading. From an offensive standpoint, it does feel like Will Stein is a massive upgrade over what you had currently with Bush Hamden and Mark Stoops running the show. So what happens to Oregon during the playoffs? It hasn't been announced yet. I would assume that Will Stein will stay there through the playoffs. I will assume that he is able to build a staff. And again, that's kind of the difference between a guy like Lane Kiffin, a guy like John Summerall, Eric Morris, and Will Stein. You can stay on staff when you are a coordinator. And especially when you're a coordinator that is leaving the conference and going to a school in the SEC. The reason why, again, the Lane Kiffin thing got brought up is because Lane Kiffin cannot be the head coach at LSU and coach the Ole Miss Rebels in the college football playoff. It's a breach of contract, and more specifically, it's a breach of interest. So it doesn't end up working out that way. I love UK. I would love to see UK be a more prolific program in football. I would love to be able to see Will Stein come on in, change the culture, revamp the offense, bring more juice, revitalization to the team. And if he does all those things, then Kentucky's got to pay him. Because that's just what this comes down to. You got to have money and resources for NIL. You got to have money and resources for recruiting. You got to be able to change the way that you go about recruiting certain areas of the country. The good news is also Will Stein has experience in Texas. He has experience out on the West Coast. He knows a ton of areas to where you can create new avenues and new hotbed destinations throughout the country that will look at Lexington and say, you want to play for the style of offense? Come on into Kroger Field. We'll make you a better football player for it. That's where it is. What do you think is the 5 worst jobs in the SEC? That's a good question. Right now, I would probably say Arkansas is the worst just because of the buy-in and what you have from the booster standpoint, the NIL collective. Now, what we're hearing coming out today is that Ryan Silverfield, who's been flipping some kids at the very last second, right before early signing period, they are finally willing to spend money the way they weren't underneath Sam Pittman. There still are a lot of things that you got to do to better this roster. I think probably right now you also got to look at Kentucky is definitely in that pecking order. They've never been a football school. Even when they had those 10-win seasons, they've had 2 10-win seasons underneath Mark Stoops, the all-time winningest coach. The all-time winningest coach at Kentucky, I want to remind you guys, is 82-80 if you have the wins that were vacated away from him. If you take away the wins, it's still a sub-500 school. So I throw that one into the mix. I think Missouri right now is still in a little bit of a traction record because of there's not enough information on if they can be that sustainable underneath a guy in Eli Drinkwitz. So far, it's been really prominent over the last few years. Can it keep going that way? That'll be big. I would probably say Mississippi State. You're always feeling like that you're the second runner-up in that program in that state, especially with what we've seen for Ole Miss over the few years. The fact that we were able to see such consistency with Dan Mullen, I think speaks incredible volume of what you were able to accomplish there and why it's been so hard to duplicate outside of the couple years you had Mike Leach. Because remember, that program was also a bottom dweller. I don't know what is the last one, if I'm being completely honest. I think it rotates every few years on who is the team that isn't putting a lot of money into the resources of the program. But those 4 absolutely, I think, are in the bottom. Probably Vanderbilt is in that conversation just because of it is really, really hard to recruit. It's a private institution. There are certain addendums that you have to meet. but they have the right coach. So we could end up seeing this program turn the corner and it end up becoming a higher viewed job in the public eye because of what you brought in with the registry of Clark Lee, the attitude change, the adjustments, all the little things that you really, really, really want to see. SEC is cooked. I don't think it'll ever be cooked, if I'm being completely honest. I just don't see that happening. I think if Vanderbilt can be a playoff contender, so can Kentucky. The problem with this Mega Boy is that we have one data point right now on on Vanderbilt. One great year and a total of 5 good years in the last 30 seasons. Like, that's it. So they are a contender this year for the playoff. Can they be a contender consistently? That's kind of where we are when it comes to the Vanderbilt standpoint. They were really good in 2025. This is their first 10-win regular season in program history. They've been around for over 100 years. You got to have more than just one data point to say it. So maybe that's kind of the way it is. Dude sucked at Oregon. I'm glad he's leaving. How did he suck? I would love to know how Will Stein sucked at Oregon when you just went 11-1 this year. You went 13-0 last year. You've had 2 quarterbacks be Heisman Trophy finalists. You've been able to win over the last several games without 3 of your top receivers. Malik Benson was awesome against Washington. And this is a guy who is having a back-to-back season of top 10 scoring and top 10 efficiency in red zone opportunities. Doesn't seem like a guy who sucks at Oregon. Seems like a dude who very much was able to get the job done and put himself in a pretty good spot. Good move by Kentucky. It's a good move on paper. I don't know if it's going to be a great move long-term. Bottom line, you got to put your money where your mouth is. So now Kentucky's got to be able to go out. They got to be able to recruit. They got to be able to sell the idea of where this team is. They got to be able to put themselves in a position to where they can easily go and bring in the right targets. And they got to go reach out to the necessary boosters and start donating money. That's just it. Because it's a good hire on paper, but the way that you can go ahead and make it a great hire is to guarantee that there is buy-in from those who are writing the checks. So that way you were able to go toe-to-toe with Arkansas for a recruit, toe-to-toe with South Carolina for a recruit, Vanderbilt, Tennessee, even Florida or Ole Miss for that matter, because we don't know what those programs are right now. That's what makes this a good hire for the long term. Is this the best fit? I wish we would have gone with Brian Hartline. I think that it's a very, very good fit. I do. I understand if you want to go with Brian Hartline, the development of talent is tenfold. And I will say the one thing that I will give Brian Hartline a little bit over Will Stein, not because of he's not from the state of Kentucky, but because of the hotbed destinations that you're looking at in where you're going to have to recruit in Ohio and Indiana, in parts of Kentucky, in West Virginia, in Virginia. You were watching as Brian Hartline where it was able to find talent in those spots. And so Brian Hartline knows the lay of the land a little bit better when it comes to the identity of what you want for a recruiting aspect of things. I think from a play calling standpoint, I like Will Stein a little bit better than what we see from Brian Hartline. We have 1 year of Brian Hartline. We have 3 years at Oregon for Will Stein. We have 2 years of him at UTSA. All 5 years that he has been a play caller at every level. He has finished top 20 in total score in total offense. He has finished top 20 in scoring offense. He has finished top 15 in red zone efficiency. And this past year, they had one of the best rushing attacks in college football with like 4 different running backs. Oh, and by the way, there's a guy by the name of Mekhi Hughes. Probably some of you have heard of him before. Had a great year last season at Tulane. Kind of came on into Oregon. Didn't have a lot of a role. Redshirted this year. Comes on in. I have a good feeling that he will be a name that Kentucky is going to target. He sucks, bro. Should have gotten Hartline as Oregon fan, dude. Idiot at play calling. No. How is he an idiot at play calling? You're going to have to say what that is. Just because you hired Oregon OC doesn't mean you're going to get the same offense. You don't have the athlete for words. Again, I'm making this clear, guys. It's a good hire for the offensive personnel standpoint. It's a good hire because this is a guy who understands the state of Kentucky. It's a good hire because it's somebody who I think Mitch Barnhart targeted immediately. He has been considered one of the biggest risers in the sport, especially when it comes to the next big offensive name to pay attention to. That's it. But I will tell you, if you don't have the resources, if you don't be able to bring in the right staff and you don't have the right recruits, it's not going to end up mattering. That's what this comes down to. Assuming money and staff and NIL is in place, are the powers going to be lined up for a new coach engagement recruiting process? Not this year, probably. I would say you're probably relying heavily on the transfer portal. And I think that you're always going to rely heavily on the transfer portal on a place like Kentucky. You just are. But I do think that over time, you're going to be able to land the right recruits. Players that are looking at schools throughout the state of Ohio and Michigan and Indiana and Illinois and West Virginia. And you will land kids that are looking at high-profile schools in the Big 12 and schools that are looking at and kids that are looking at the ACC and lower-tier schools in the Big 10. And they will view Kentucky with what they have offensively into a really good spot. So that's what I think is going to happen. Not this year. And this year, again, with your schedule, it's going to be a long year. Like, I'm just looking right now at it, top to bottom. I see automatically 2 wins. That's it. Youngstown State and South Alabama. That might be all you get this year. It's all about building for the long-term future. I think retaining as much of the offensive personnel talent and guys like Connor Bully, really important. I think who you hire as your defense coordinator is going to be really, really dire. Do you go after somebody who is currently on staff at Oregon? Do you reach out for somebody from the outside that maybe understands the lay of the land better? Who's to say? But I do think that there is a lot to like in certain areas to where he understands what it's going to take to win at Kentucky. That's just what I think. Sound will be good for Kentucky. I think in the long term, it will be good for Kentucky. I think the big question is, though, guys, if he ends up doing really well, if he ends up succeeding, overkill, fantastic 2 years, you got to pay him. Because if that's what this comes down to, you got to pay him, you got to pay his staff, you got to basically do what Missouri's doing with Eli Drinkwitz, you got to do what Vanderbilt's doing with Clark Lee, you got to have buy-in. Because if you don't have that, another school's going to call him, they're going to see what he's doing at a place like Kentucky, with the resources, with where they rank every single year in the transfer portal rankings, for where they rank in recruiting in the SEC, and they'll say, we'll pay you a bucket load of money to go ahead and keep him on it. You think he keeps Bush Handham? I do not. I think if they go in a completely different direction. Guys, I'm just going to be completely real. Number one, I think he's going to be calling plays. I think he will, at least for the first year, kind of pull an Eli Drinkwitz and call plays. And I think that's the reason why, because of bottom line, I think that when you look at what he wants to do, he wants to establish his offense. That's just my stance on it. And so Bush Handham's offense that this past season, again, was 101st in scoring, was 105th in total yards, 95th in rushing, 86 in rushing, 95th in passing. They gave up 29 sacks, 101st in the country, and they were 111th in red zone efficiency. All those things, you got to hit reset. That's just kind of thinking where I'm at when it comes to the offensive personnel. That's my stance on it. Will Stein loves Kentucky. He does. He has said on multiple occasions, he grew up a Kentucky fan. He played at Louisville, but you know what? He was always bleeding blue. He wants to stay with them. Buckeye fan here. Thanks for passing on Heartline. Heartline might get a job somewhere else still, guys. I don't know. I mean, I probably don't think that it's going to happen this year, but I will say he's going to get hired eventually sooner rather than later. He bleeds blue. Yes, he does. I hope he brings the QB from Oregon kid's dog. He's not bringing Dante Moore. He may end up figuring out, depending on what happens with the Cal hire. Because again, remember, JKS. I'm not going to try and say his name. I'm just not going to do that right now. I don't want to butcher it and look like an idiot later on the internet. I think that could be a name depending on who they hire at Cal. Remember, Will Stein recruited him to Oregon. Could maybe you go ahead and recruit him to the SEC? What OC do you think South Carolina will hire? I believe that they're going to go add in David Baker from ECU. This past season, ECU was a night and day different offense. He has experience in the SEC. He formerly worked underneath Lane Kiffin. I think that's probably where you're looking, all the tea leaves and all the people that I've spoken to. That's kind of where we're looking at right now. Elite hire. I think it is a great hire if you're able to surround him with the right staff, the right recruits, and the right people. That makes this an elite hire. That's my opinion. We'll do this for about 5 more minutes. Get your questions, comments, whatever else you want to talk about in on this. Before we do, let me tell you about my friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel.com/SECU is the perfect place to sign on up. Go ahead and bet on what you think the win total is going to be for Will Stein in 2026, when the Wildcats enter a new era at Kroger Field. I think it's going to be 3 wins. I think it's going to be 5 wins. Whatever it is, go ahead and place your bets. When you do so, you win your bet. You're going to get $300 in bonus bets. And this could be on anything, not just the Will Stein hire. Could you go out and maybe go ahead and do it for the NCAA season? Can you do it for college baseball season? Could you do it for the NHL, the NBA? Whatever it is, Sign up, FanDuel.com/SECU. Get started, $300 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. FanDuel, not only our friends here at SEC Unfiltered, the official betting partner of the NBA. Let's get to your questions, comments before we get on out of here. I see a ton of Oregon fans complaining about the predictable play calling on a lot of screens with Stein. I haven't seen it, if I'm being completely real. You also got to remind yourself, guys, they have been limited at wide receiver over the last few weeks. They haven't had DeCorian Moore. They haven't had Evan Stewart all year. They haven't had Gary Bryant. So if we're talking about just over the last 4 or 5 weeks, they've had Malik Benson, a bunch of guys that have barely played, and they have Kenyon Sadiq. And Kenyon Sadiq's a great tight end, and you could think that the offense, because that he's been in, is now going to make him potentially a first-round pick at the position. But I don't know if I haven't seen enough of the film. I know that his offense has been explosive the last 2 years. They've been top 20 in scoring. They've been top 10 in total yards. They run the crap out of the football. They've been one of the best run-oriented teams in the Big Ten over the last 2 years. And they got 4 running backs that all are making plays, and they're all rotating on in, and none of them are missing a beat. They're all averaging 5 yards a play. So the predictability with the play calling is something that they're looking at. It's going to be something that I think is going to be, probably one that they're going to have to work their way through. I think they even interviewed Hartline or went straight to Stein. From what I've gathered, it was always coming down to those two. I don't know if he interviewed. I saw a report earlier today that he was going to interview tomorrow. What I will tell you is they probably reached out to both of their camps and they said, would you like to become the next head coach of Kentucky? Is this a job that you would actually target and say you would look at completely and tell us that we would be the destination for you? And I think they both said yes. And that was why they were willing to move off of Mark Stoops. Mitch Barnhart was not going to burn that contract with the ramifications of if Mark wanted to go to court and pay $37.7 million in a buyout right then and there, there was no way that he was going to make that move if he didn't know he had a surefire thing coming on in. So I think that this was always going to move fast. I think that this was always going to be something that was going to be working behind closed doors. I think that this was probably set in motion 2 or 3 days ago before they ever knew if even they were going to beat Louisville. I think that that was always going to be the case. Do you think Will Stein will bring? Who do you think Will Stein will bring with him to Kentucky? Do you think Will Stein bring with him to Kentucky? I think you mean from the coaching staff. I'm not sure. Probably you're going to look at one of the wide receivers coaches. Maybe you'll look at their offensive line coach. Again, the thing is that now that he is leaving, Dan Lanning has got to find a new offensive coordinator. So if they're both fighting for an offensive coordinator, Dan Lanning can say, here's how much I'm going to pay you to be my OC. He could go for another outside hire, the way that he did when he brought in Will Stein from UTSA to replace Kenny Dillingham. And that was something that I could easily see him doing. So I'm not really sure when it comes to these things right now. You were outside your mind if you think that Dante's coming with him to Kentucky even for a second. He ain't going to Kentucky. He's going to the pros, or he's staying at Oregon for another year. If you're talking about a quarterback, it's going to be one of the younger guys that is waiting in the wings, or maybe it's going to be JKS from Cal if they don't like the hire that is going to be made out in Berkeley. Because remember, JKS initially committed to Oregon. He was on campus for the first week of bowl practice, and he saw Dante Moore, and he looked and he said, I'm not winning the starting job for at least a year. I'm not winning for potentially 2 years. I got to go elsewhere. But Will Stein was very influential on recruiting him to Oregon. Then he went to Berkeley. So maybe that's the move that you go after. I don't think that you were never going to land Dante Moore. That was never going to happen. Love the hire. Now we have 2 coaches in Pope and Stein who love Kentucky. Always have love, love, love. You need to be able to get a guy like that. You did. That's probably where it is. If you're reading comments less than 2 days old, you're reading sour grapes. Thanks, Kentucky fan. He will bring Austin Novosad with him. I could see that for sure. Louisville fans are throwing up right now. I don't know why, because of, let's just be real. He's said on multiple occasions, he's Kentucky. He played at Louisville, and I get that, but you have your coach, and you have a coach that is very much fully indoctrinated in Louisville. He is all in on Louisville. Jeff Brown was going to get offers and get looked at by other programs across the SEC. He was getting looked at by programs in the Big Ten. He said, nope, I'm good at Louisville, and he's going to sign a contract extension. So that was never going to be up for the job. Will Stein, dad played at Kentucky. He grew up a Kentucky fan. Got to go ahead and say that's probably it. He'll bring Austin Novosad with him. Got to give props to Stoops, though, for letting the school pay him over the years and have money to build. Yeah, you really do. I will give a lot of commitment to Mark Stoops on that one because he could have easily been kicking and screaming this way on out. It probably was something that was definitely discussed. And I think at the end of the day, that was something that he probably said, okay, I'll go ahead and move. Stein loves 12 personnel. UK is serious talent with Willie Rodriguez and 4-star freshman Mikkel Skinner. Willie Rodriguez is going to be a name. I think that Jalen Farmer, he's got another year of eligibility or 2 years of eligibility, if I'm not mistaken. He'll be a name that you probably want to keep around. Carter Boley is probably going to be his quarterback for right now. I would say 90% of that. That's where it is. I don't think Cutter's going to be a fit with his offense. I think he probably will. I think he's going to be around. Dude, his ass. I don't know why somebody would hire him as a coach. Okay, here we go again. 615. You're always going to be negative in this one. Because this is the last time they will be Kentucky for a long time. That's right. Gotcha. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Again, next season, I just would probably go ahead and say, we're going to throw it out the wayside. You could be a 3-9 team. You could be a 4-8 team. You're going to have to be really, really aggressive in the portal over the next year. Just that's kind of where you are. Dakota Neat Fields, blue chip corner, who's a freshman, got buried, may come in. He's in the portal. Probably. Okay, man. Okay, you guys are talking about something else. All right, we're going to end the live stream here. Final reality. Kentucky finds its head coach. They probably realized that they were going to have to land somebody that they believed was going to be an upgrade over what they had currently when it came to the offensive play calling. They were going to get that with either Brian Hartline or Will Stein. They decided to go after the dude who's from the state, who has ties to the program, and wants to be a part of Kentucky. So the hire may end up being really good. The hire may end up being really crappy. This all comes down to Mitch Barnhart, the boosters, the NIL collective, and the aggressiveness this upcoming season and over the next 2 years to build a great foundation in the portal and in recruiting. If they do those things, from a play calling standpoint, from an offensive personnel standpoint, I like the hire a lot. But if you don't have those little things that you see at Vanderbilt, what you see at Florida, what you see at Ole Miss, you're not going to see much growth. But you have 3 years probably to figure it on out. All right, I'm Cole Thompson. You guys have a good rest of your night. We will talk to you tomorrow when we end up talking about the college football playoff selection committee. Who is where? We'll figure that one out. Till next time, guys. Peace.